Welcome back to the Cat's Tail. After I went 4-1 with this deck in the EU tournament this week, I had a few people ask me to upload the footage of my games. I figured that while I was at it, I'd do a bit of a deck tech and add some commentary. I find this deck to be really fun, and pretty strong, so I'd recommend giving it a go if you're interested. Let's jump straight into the first game, and then explain the deck afterwards. So in this first game, opponent starts first. Going into our mulligan here, we notice that we have Master Zhang, one of our key cards, but we don't have any other weapons, so I'm even going to go as far as even to touch Ancient Courtyard, and all the other cards looking for at least one weapon. We actually end up with our second Master Zhang as well, and the second one's a lot less important than the first one, but if we've got both on turn 1, we're probably going to play both. Now we're starting on Shunhe here. We're playing against Agent Electrocharge, so we're playing against OCR, Nid, Liyue and Agent, so I know their plan's going to be to get lots of summons out with these two characters and then have their Fatui Pyro Agent in reserve for the late game. And having picked up a Wave and Die here, I have a pretty general plan that I'm going to be using Shunhe's skill and normal attack along with my Lithic Spear this turn and start to get a lot of value out of that weapon. So you don't generally want to be using a lot of skills on the character in this deck if they don't have a weapon. So if I have one spear here, I can equip to Shunhe. Best to, every time I use a skill here, that's effectively +1 damage, so that's a little bit of extra value. Opponents getting some value already out of their Dunyarzad, getting a cheaper Paimon, and drawing a card off their Liven here. But our start's pretty good here. We had enough decent dice that we were able to pull off this play. Though we did have to use several of our cards in our hand. So you do need a lot of cards to get the weapon synergies going, which is partly why this deck plays a lot of draw cards. And speaking of which, we draw here Liven and Liyue Harbour Wharf, so they can hopefully help us to find those cards in future turns. I'm even going to reroll the Geodai here because again, I don't really want to be using Zhongli if I don't have a weapon for him, and I don't really expect to be getting lots of crystallized reactions quite yet. Opponent's going to sit out their summons. I'm going to use Shunhe's Burst at the start of the turn, which is ideal because now I've got all of this turn and next turn potentially to get value out of the fact that my cryo and physical damage will be increased by 1. Although I don't really have the right dice to start getting value on this turn, and since I do want to prioritize drawing, weapons from other characters, every weapon I draw is going to be insanely good because it's going to be discounted by 2 by each of these Master Zhangs. So even though it's a little bit of loss of tempo, a bit of a slow play, playing both these cards here, start drawing, is pretty good. And letting my opponents face around these summons, and this Shunhe already have Hydro on her. Maybe I can deny one Hydro reaction here if I stay on Shunhe, and it shouldn't be enough damage just from the summons to kill Shunhe on this turn at least. So I'm safe enough just using my dice efficiently and not worrying about swapping my characters just yet. So I get 2 extra cards from my Liyue Harbour Wharf. I'm getting extra cards from Liben and 2 extra Omni Ice at the start of this turn. So this should be a powerful turn for me, especially since my Shunhe summon is still up, giving me extra damage. And I've got Cryo Aura on 2 of the characters so far, so it's probably about time to switch to Zhongli and start getting some crystallized reactions going. Especially seeing as I have found a weapon for him now, so that's looking pretty good. Now I haven't found Nasty of the Millilith, which is another important card, even after going through almost half my deck, so I'll have to play this game without it, looks like. So I'm just using his normal 3 cost ability, and not tuning. I'd have to tune a die if I wanted to use the more powerful skill, and I think it's just more important to get the summon out here. Opponent's got Rana, so again a bit more value out of their Dunyarzad, a bit more value over time. So opponent's game plan's progressing quite nicely here too. I'm okay doing a normal attack on Zhongli because this is a 4 damage normal attack with this Talisman Spirits out. Obviously one of those damages goes to reducing the stealth, on their Victory Pyro Agent, but it's still pretty efficient, and building up energy on Zhongli is pretty good too. And this leaves me with some cryo dice. It uses my dice which aren't useful elements quite nicely. And my original plan was to potentially use Shinhe's skill or Ganyu's skill here, with the help of this woven die. But in this case, with the Lotus Flower Crisp they played on their agent, I'm okay just using this pizza. The health on Zhongli is going to be very valuable, and just drawing some more cards, because every card I draw is worth quite a lot, especially with these Master Zangs out, drawing this, whereas the Unseen Razor, that's kind of like 0 dice for either 3 shield with my Lithic Spear, most likely, or if I draw Moon Piercer, it's almost like 2 Wavens. And I'm already getting this crystallized reaction on his Victory Pyro Agent at the end of turn. Here we go, I've drawn over half my deck at this point, down to 11 cards left in deck, so I'm getting the last few of my weapons out here. So the Master Zangs are really going to start to pay off now. They've really done a good job helping fix the dice and getting a little bit of discount, but this is where the late to mid game strength of the deck actually starts to be more visible. We've also got to a point where our Ganyu is just a little bit out of range of their Pyro Agent with any of their possible moves. So this is costing me 0 dice for this bow, and then that also discounts my next elemental skill. And this also puts my Ganyu at a really difficult breakpoint with the help of the Ice Lotus. Even a burst on Victory Pyro Agent wouldn't take Ganyu out. They need something like Adeptus' Temptation as well. And they heal up their Oceanid. They do want to get some more of these summons out, and they're quite likely to also want to work towards Oceanid's burst. So, having drawn these cards, one of the nice things about this deck is how you get extra range from the Icy Quill, from the weapon, and from the different moves you have in the different characters. So you can hit breakpoints quite easily. So I've got here the Elemental Resonance, Shattering Ice for +2 damage, which in this case, along with Ganyu's 5 cost skill, or 5 cost normal attack, is able to take out the Oceanid even though they healed their Oceanid. And then Yai here comes in with Adeptus, and I'm okay with this. They haven't used a resource, Adeptus Temptation, to kill Ganyu, who's not my most important character. Zhongli still safe over here, and it's going to take out their summon too if they're doing this. This is totally fine. They're going to get 3 more damage in a second, but I'm actually just going to stick that out with a Lotus Flower Crisp. And hey, especially because my Mustang here still hasn't been used, it's efficient to get that discount. Just turn this Liyue Spear to my hand and replay it for an extra 3 shield. Important to play the Lotus Flower Crisp first, because then the Crisp will take the damage rather than the shield. Now in turn I get another bit of a crystallized reaction here. Zhongli's close to 3 energy. 3 energy Zhongli is very good in the late game against other slower decks, where you can, if they're left with just one character, disable that character fully. And we're at the end game here now, where I've got a pretty sizable advantage, especially with these cards in my hand. I've had some pretty good rolls this game too, which is worth mentioning. And then just a little bit more weapon shenanigans to get some discounts. Actively there, just getting 2 free Wovens out of my Unseen Razor. And the burst here, so he takes Zhongli down to 4. I'm just going to play this super safe, just to do a bit of damage here. They need something to stop their Chewy Agent from dying to turn. And looks like they don't decide to make such a move, so when I pass the turn, get the crystallize here, and if we needed it, we'd still have Zhongli's burst if our Shinhe was taken down for any reason. Closing out the game. So this is a weapons deck, which means it's built around the keycard Master Zang. Although other synergy cards such as Where is the Unseen Razor, Golden House, and Ancient Courtyard definitely help, one Master Zang can effectively provide 3 dice worth of dice advantage each turn, which is an extremely high ceiling and is the main reason to try building a deck like this. In general, playing 6 weapons in a deck would be a very bad idea, because by the time you've equipped weapons to all 3 of your characters, the game is probably halfway over already, and you haven't left yourself with many dice to actually use skills and get value out of those weapons. However, some weapons help reduce this issue. King Squire and Moon Piercer effectively refund you 2 dice when played, helping you get more of those buffed skills out. More importantly, if you can build a team with 3 Liyue characters, Lithic Spear gives 3 shield when played, which gives the character you invested in by equipping a weapon some much needed survivability. Critically, all these weapons are also excellent to replay with the help of Where is the Unseen Razor. Choosing the lineup of Zhongli, Shunhe, and Ganyu allows you to play all these 3 weapons and get the full 3 shield out of the Lithic Spear's effect, as well as gain access to the Crystallize reaction for survivability and the very powerful Cryo Resonance cards. Zhongli is an excellent late game anchor who holds weapons very well due to his high survivability, especially as Moon Piercer makes his powerful 5-cost skill far easier to use. Shunhe is just a very strong character, with an effective 5 damage skill and a burst which applies a good amount of cryo, while buffing all your cryo and normal attacks. Ganyu's skill isn't amazing, but scales nicely with weapons, and adds even more survivability. And while her 5-cost skill doesn't scale with weapons as well, it's extra upside, which can be situationally very powerful. Otherwise, the rest of the deck is filled out by a large number of good card draw, to maximize the consistency of drawing the different pieces of the weapon synergy, food for sustain, and a few other strong cards for utility. Okay, so in this second game, our opponent's starting first. In our mulligan, we've got a few options for card draw. Ancient Courtyard, but no weapons. Now, since you do need to draw the weapon and the weapon synergies for this deck to really get going, it is worth keeping some card draw in your hand. And Liyue Harbour Wolf is the best card draw to keep in your opening hand, so I'm going to keep this just to increase the size of my hand for the future turns. And since I'm probably going to mulligan the other 3 cards, I decided it's worth keeping the Ancient Courtyard, since I'm very likely, off the back of the Liyue Harbour Wolf and those 3 cards mulliganed, to draw some artifacts and weapons, and it does pay off. So you've got a few options to start with on this first turn. I keep 3 Geodice mostly just to cast a artifact off, not because I'm planning to use Zhongli. And there's a couple of options for this turn. Want to develop at least 1 Tenacity, you could consider playing both Tenacities. Opponent's playing a fairly aggressive deck with Lisa Electrocharged, so using Lisa as a main damage dealer or an anchor in the late game, and using fellow Hydro characters for Hydro application. I decided I'm probably going to only have time to play 1 of these Tenacities. So I'll just play 1 Tenacity onto Zhongli for the late game eventually, and develop the Liyue Harbour Wolf as a main priority to start drawing cards so I can start getting my stronger synergies going. I've got then draw now Master Zhang and some weapons, plus the Ancient Courtyard that we kept for extra discounts. So again, some very nice dice rolls, and that's going to give us a few options for this turn, but we're going to want to play a weapon before we start using any more skills, just to start getting that damage in. So with the help of Zhang and Ancient Courtyard, this Lithic Spear is free, and we can use Shunhe's elemental skill and get those icicles for later. I'm going to use Shunhe's elemental burst, so I'm not spending dice unnecessarily dropping around characters if I've still got good moves on Shunhe. Shunhe's got the weapon, so it makes sense to make use of that. Especially seeing as how Lisa's conductive stacks work, it's almost better to clear those out sooner rather than later if they're going to keep using Lisa. But as it is, we've got some good cryo applied now. We've got Zhongli with Nessie the Millilith, and while there's no weapon for him quite yet, we can still start to get some crystallized reactions going. Some cryo and geodice. Insanely lucky with our dice this game so far, so thank you die rolls. But we've got some good options too. I mean, we've got the weapons to use if we didn't have good dice. As it is, we're just going to tune one of them to get efficient kill, along with my shield I get from the 5 cost elemental skill on Zhongli. I get an efficient kill on the Mirror Maiden. And this also leaves me with a suitable amount of dice, where I can actually still use this King Squire with Ganyu, thanks to the discount from Master Zhang. See how this works. We're able to swap off Zhongli after Zhongli's got the value from Tenacity of the Millelith, and King Squire for 1 die, Raven die for a Cryo die, and then I can use Ganyu's Lotus for 4 damage thanks to the Quills and the Talisman Spirit here, as well as the 2 Ice Lotus stacks. And this is a big part of why Ice Lotus actually becomes quite a strong skill in this deck, because even though it's only 1 damage, usually the flat scaling from the Icy Quills and the Talisman Spirit and the weapon can easily bump that up. And then the Ice Lotus stacks help you survive to keep getting value out of the weapons. And at this point, thanks in part to some nice rolls, but also to all of our synergies we've been able to pull off, we're in a very strong position where we can take out Mona here, and opponent will just have their Hypercarry left, but I'm more focused on getting damage in on Lisa if need be, and I can take out Mona later quite easily. I'm just going to focus here, a bit more value from my Lithic Spear. Look at all this defense on my Zhongli. What's this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. Effectively 17 HP Zhongli sitting here. And I can easily get him up to 3 energy over the next turn. And that should be very powerful in the late game stall versus stall situation. And even taking out Mona here with that summoner end of turn, which works out nicely for me. And then last few turns here, getting some extra draws of Liban. As always, those extra draws helping me find my Sinji pieces, more weapons that are going to be discounted by Master Zhang. In this case, these weapons are costing me 0, my first weapon for the turn. And then if I play the second Zhang, my second weapon will also cost me 0. So once you get to this point, once you draw enough cards, the Sinjis are very, very powerful. And there's a few ways to win from this point.
You've been a naughty boy. What are my orders?
As it is, I'm just playing it potentially more safely than I need to. Just getting an extra crystallized reaction out, saving my cards in hand. I can always use this weapon next turn, so there's no real rush to play the second Master Zhang. And now I can lead off with Zhongli's Burst at the start of this turn, and it should lock up the game with my opponent not being able to use any skills this turn, other than their first move. For once my dice not being kind to me, but at this point it shouldn't be a problem. The Lotus will buy a tiny bit of time for my opponent, but only enough time for me to tune 2 cards. The last couple of hits. Okay, very smooth game there, showing how the game and how the deck can run if things go to plan. Okay, so match 3. We start first against quite a strong deck, a strong opponent, playing Venti EC. So the way their deck tends to work is they will play artifacts on the characters, and then they will swap between their characters and get a lot of discounts by using the skills of all their characters each turn and triggering a lot of area effect, reaction, swirls, and electrocharged. So in the mulligan I actually choose to keep, since I already have a Lithic Spear, I choose to keep the Cryo-Woven die, because that will allow me to use the weapon and use 2 skills on Shunha on the first turn. Now my dice are a little bit awkward. If I want to make that play I will have to tune 1 card and use my Woven die, but it is worth doing. So yeah, I'll tune 1 card, use Shunha's skill here. An opponent puts their first artifact to get the discount on their Kyujosara's ability, and I'll use my Raven die to get another attack in. And this will allow me to use my bursts immediately next turn, and then I'll have that burst going for all of round 2 and round 3. And getting in damage against a character that they've already put an artifact on is quite nice, because they will want to use that character on a future turn. They have the ability to use Ancient Courtyard to get another artifact onto their Mona here as well. So that's quite a good start for them with 2 artifacts, and then they can even spend their last die efficiently with a Strategize. So pretty good starts for both sides here. Now it's quite good, and part of the reason I chose to do this opening in the deck, it's quite good to stay on 1 character for the first round, because this will make sure that all your auras react together, and it makes it a bit harder for them to swirl on Venti on this second round. Not very good dice here, so reroll everything into dice that also aren't great, but it should be okay. We just need to tune 1 card. I tune the Ancient Courtyard since I currently don't actually have a use for it, and I don't really want to take the risk. And I will need all my other dice for my plan for this turn. Use Shunha's burst here, and then this will give me more cryo application, and it will give me more damage on my cryo and physical attacks all of this round and all of next round too. So it's good to develop at the start of the round if you can. I'll swap to Ganyu. This means that they can't easily trigger Swirl on Venti right away here. So they're probably going to... well, they will either need some cards in hand to give them discounts. For example, they play here the Changing Shifts. Or they would need to go to Venti first and use the elemental skill here to make their switching of characters cost 1 fewer elemental die. But as is, they go to Sara first and use the skill. Now if they want to use Venti's skill as well, which is what I assume, they'll need another way to discount that, so another Changing Shifts. And it's not really realistic for me to make any other move than just playing these 2 cards in my hand, which allows me nicely to play around the Lotus Flower Crisp they played, which in a way they were kind of forced to use, because if I just used, let's say I just had King Squire as the bow, then this Trail of the Krillin would be dealing 4 damage thanks to the Icy Quill and the Talisman Spirit, so I'd get an extremely efficient kill on Kyujosara if I just had the King Squire bow. So they played around that by playing the Lotus Flower Crisp, but as it turns out, it works out fortunately for me, given the cards I had in hand. And drawing these cards with Liyue, Halberwolf and Liben, better do it sooner rather than later so I get the options in my hand, and I do still want to get those synergies going. Opponent's going to end on the Mona here, allowing them to potentially quick swap at the start next turn. And with the help of these extra draws, drawing a Lithic Spear, Lotus Flower Crisp, Zhang to get my weapon synergy started. I'm 11 cards deep in my deck, so while it's fortunate to be drawing these cards, it's not like it's especially lucky. I do get some very lucky rolls though here, and thanks to the Liben as well, I should be able to pull off whatever play I want to on this turn. Now, with Ganyu here, I do have the Elemental Resonance Shattering Ice, and thanks to the Icy Quill and this Talisman Spirit giving me +2 to my cryo damage, I do actually have the option to use this Frostflake arrow with the cryo resonance for 6 damage. And since their Mona You know, it has these Crow Feather Coven stacks, has an artifact on her already. It does have a lot of value to take out Mona here and now. So I will go ahead and do that. Use the Elemental Resonance for +2 damage. Use this normal attack and deal a total of 8 damage there. So you don't always want to be using this normal attack on Ganyu in this deck, and you don't usually want to be using skills on characters if they don't have weapons, but in this case it ends up being a very powerful option to have. Opponent can take out my Ganyu there. I'm totally okay with that, and the way I counted out the dice with the help of this I haven't lost yet allows me to play my Zhang. Gives me a discount of 2 on this Moon Piercer, which gives me a discount of 2 on my skill, which allows me to use Zhongli's 5 cost skill here. So I've used Ganyu's 5 cost and Zhongli's 5 cost both together in one turn, as well as the weapon and the Master Zhang I developed here. So from this point, just doing a little bit of maths, as long as I end turn first, even if they have Adeptus Temptation, my Zhongli should be surviving 1 health, and my Shunhe here, they can swirl the Electro Aura, but Shunhe should always be surviving on 1 health here as well. So I'm okay saving this Lithic Spear in hand, because I don't actually think they can quite kill my Zhongli here this turn. Otherwise I could have considered using the Lithic Spear instead of the Moon Piercer last turn. But as it turns out, you know, I'm surviving this turn with both my characters, and given an opponent doesn't have anything else, my summons are going to be taking out one of their characters next turn, and I'll be starting first on the next turn. So, especially with the tools I have in hand, ends up being a pretty decisive win in the end. Okay, so our opponent starts first in this game, and our hand's looking pretty good here. We don't have any weapons yet though, so we will need to toss something. We're playing against a slow deck, a stall deck, so I'm okay tossing the Ancient Courtyard for now. We do find ourselves a weapon. It's most important just to have one of those as early as possible to start getting the damage in. Now we're playing against a stall deck Din, so Dia, Ito, Noel, where the idea is Dia just provides a lot of protection, a bit of elemental application from off field, and then you've got the very strong core of Ito and Noel, both of whom can be hypercarries with equipment on them. Now this is going to be a long game since our deck is also fairly slow, and as a more mid-range deck we are a bit disfavoured in this matchup since we don't have any cards like Sumeri City or Tenshukaku, which give us extra value turn by turn. First thing we have is Dynasty of the Millelith, and we haven't drawn any of those yet into our hand. We are going to be able to start putting on some pressure though with the help of this weapon, and you know, hopefully just putting on pressure over the course of the game will allow us to get there. I'm going to increase the pressure, just use another elemental skill here, get a bit more cryo applied. Knock Liyue down to 6 health from off field, and still have the 2 for this Liyue Harbour Wharf. So it's still a good opening for us. We've got Master Zhang going and a little bit of Golden House value here already. And our opponent here is on their turn 1 not being able to develop either their Tenacity of the Millelith or their Bell, which are probably the 2 most important cards they want for a long matchup as well. So no Tenacity of the Milleliths out yet for either player. We've got another weapon here, we've got a bit more draw, so we can get the draw going. But we will need to keep finding ways to put on the pressure. Our dice rolls aren't great here, but if I'm using Shinhe's Burst at the start of the turn, then at least I've got options to start dealing some damage with normal attacks and having that damage increased a bit. Opponent's getting some use out of the off-field elemental application, getting some crystallized reactions, getting some shield in. I'm going to move my spear over to Zhongli here so I can start getting my own crystallized reactions going. And since I don't really care about the extra shield from the 5 cost skill, it's better to just get more individual attacks in and get cards in my hand played out rather than tuning cards for the more expensive version of the 5 cost skill. I'll switch over to Ganyu here since it might be okay to apply an element to the Ito and Also maybe save my Zhongli for some damage. Opponent still doesn't have Tenacity of the Millelith or a weapon. We draw our own Tenacity of the Millelith here. So would probably be sensible to play that out sooner rather than later. But I think that ends up being one of my big mistakes this game. Because our opponents are getting quite low and we do have quite a lot of damage still going, especially with this Talisman Spirit here. So perhaps it's good for us just to go on the aggressive. Now we do have these two Elemental Woven dice in hand, and it's good to try to save these sorts of resources for when this Talisman Spirit is still out. Opponent has Lotus Flower Crisp and a bit of protection and Tenacity of the Millelith on here, but I can't really get away with not attacking Noelle this turn. So I'm just going to knock off the Lotus Flower Crisp with Ganyu's skill, the Lotus. That does get some value out of the... would get some value out of the Icy Quills, but starts letting me get value out of the Ice Lotus stacks here. And I've still got quite a lot of options available that my opponent potentially doesn't know about. Something that's worth noting is opponents play the Tenacity of the Millelith on their Noelle, which is partly, I believe, in this matchup because they actually have quite a lot of potentially get value out of the full plate stacks, which actually also reduce the physical damage their characters take. So I don't really want to be doing physical attacks, normal attacks, if they have that shield up still. I'm going to swap to Shunhe here. Shunhe does the most immediate damage, and it is good to start refreshing the Icy Quills potentially. I still have the potential to use 2 skills here. Would be much better, much more total damage overall than just staying on Ganyu. Now, in this case, the Noelle has a lot of shield here, but it's actually important to realise I do have a very strong play here. I could actually take out their Noelle by using 2 skills on Shunhe. So I need to play both of these Elemental Resonance cards and tune 2 other cards, but with the help of these summons at the end of turn, I could actually do that. So I do play the Spear, that's going to be free thanks to the Golden House and the Master Zhang here. Buff up my damage a bit, tune 1 card for this skill. So each of these skills now is base 2, plus 1 from the weapon, plus 1 from the Icy Quills, plus 1 from the Talisman Spirit. Each skill is 5 damage. And I actually could do another one of those just by playing these 2 and tuning, let's say, the Pizza. But I just play the Pizza instead, start the value going, which is not the priority in this matchup. I really just want to be aggressive, and especially since this character has Tenacity of the Millelith on, absolutely I should take out the Noelle if I could. Now at the end of the turn we'll see 4 damage coming in from the summons, leaving their Noelle on 5 health, which is the amount I could have done just by playing these 2 Elemental Resonance Woven dice and then just doing another skill on my Shunhe. So kind of an insanely massive misplay on my part. I think if I kill Noelle here, I actually have a very easy path to winning this game. But as it is, it's going to be pretty tough. They have a character with Tenacity on, and I didn't actually even develop my Tenacity that turn. They can start getting crystallized reactions, they probably have a lot of food, they've got lots of cards in their hands, they probably have food they can use with their Noelle. And the weakness of this deck, as I say, is in the late game against other stall decks. They've got this Sumeru City getting the value every turn. They've got their Tenacity out already. I don't really have anything similar that gains me a similar amount of value. I can draw my whole deck and all my cards are very good because they synergize with each other very strongly. For example, with the help of the Moonpiercer weapon with the Where's the Unseen Razor card, with this Elemental Resonance, I am able to take out their Dia here, which I think is still a good play because that means they won't have that damage reduction from off field. Even though it uses one of my Cryo Resonance cards, which are very important in this matchup, I think that is worth doing. And I mean, it doesn't look like I'm in a bad spot from here. It's still looking somewhat winnable, and I can still get a lot of value out starting next turn. But I need to get maximum use out of my Shunhe's Burst and my Zhongli's Burst, I think, to punch through the Noelle and the Tenacity of the Millelith specifically. And you know, there's still going to be quite a lot of time left to play this game. I get some good rolls, which helps. I have the second Cryo Resonance in hand. I could just use that to deal some extra damage to Noel now, but might as well save it for when it's threatening lethal. Normal attack there to get the extra energy that I need. I don't really need to use the skill since I'm getting this. I've got this summon up still this turn. So opponent only has 2 dice left. It probably makes more sense to save this burst than using it. So I think my choice to use it here is a mistake. I am slightly worried that they still have potentially Covenant of Rock. They still have Woven Dice, so they could still use several more actions. But I'm not really denying much by using my Burst to freeze Noel here. So I think this is another major mistake which ends up costing me. You can use Shunha's Burst here, which is going to be enough to kill the Itto, and at least I get some value out of this burst before opponent has a chance to send off or similar. And all my characters are still on very high health, but with with all the cards in their hand, which contain several foods undoubtedly, and the tenacity of the Millith, and the ability for the Noel to use shields which reduce my normal attack damage, it might actually be very hard to deal the last few parts of damage, and this Elemental Resonance to gain 3 extra shield is not going to help things here. So all this shield, as long as they have full plate here, they're going to take half physical damage, so I have to use quite a lot of cards for tuning just to deal cryo damage and start punching through this shield. I do have the Geodice to do another Zhongli summon. Not really much point playing the Liyue when I've only got 5 cards left in the deck, probably. And so I get some more damage here at end of turn. We'll drop Noel quite low, but my Zhongli's too low here at this point really to threaten being able to get to a second burst of his own, especially seeing as right back at the start of the game I tuned my 1 copy of I Haven't Lost Yet. But even with that in hand, I don't think I'd be able to safely get the energy on Zhongli to actually threaten that burst. And without that, it's going to be... I just don't really have the damage here to punch through the shield, to punch through the food. And specifically thanks to the tenacity of the Millith, since I ended up trying for a faster game plan and botching it, rather than playing out my own tenacity of the Millith, which could have potentially let me grind out a longer game. So, no, I think this is a unfavoured matchup for the deck. We did get some good draws, and the opponent got some probably less than good draws. And the game was actually winnable, I think, if I hadn't have made one really big mistake earlier on. But you can still see the sort of strengths and weaknesses of the deck. Once I'm out of cards in my library, the only thing I have that can give repeated value over time is Tenacity of the Millith. So especially when an opponent has like a Sumeru City here, and the Bell is just, it gets more value over time than weapons that you just play once and get an immediate effect out of. So this is definitely a weakness of the deck. I think that the matchup against Bin and by extension Din is not great. It's much more tuned against aggressive decks where the shield from the Liyue Spear, the Lithic Spear, and the defensive abilities of Zhongli and Ganyu can actually get a lot more value. At this point it's just about waiting. There was maybe a bit of a chance earlier, but at this point it's not realistic to... I mean, there's no way to win from here. There's 0 cards left in the deck, and even with what's on board, it's over. So good game, well played by the opponent, despite, as they say, maybe not getting the best draws. But it's quite something to say that even in a matchup like this, against a very strong opponent, I think this game was winnable with different plays. Okay, so we start first here, and we actually get to play against an aggressive deck this time. Phew. Hand's not looking great, but Liyue is here to save us if we get bad dice and bad draws. Actually, the cards we drew to replace are looking pretty decent. No Zhang, we do have a weapon, and this is a good example of where in other games I might have started on Shunhe by default, but since I have Ganyu's weapon and no other weapon, I'm going to start on Ganyu this time. I actually make a mistake rerolling my dice. No need to keep 3 Dendro dice since this is only going to cost 2 aligned. So that could potentially cost me. It's definitely a mistake. Only a small one though. I'm going to play my King Squire here. I'm going to use my Ganyu's elemental skill. And this should buy me some time to play some slower cards, and I'll get some damage reduction in. I get some nice luck here where opponent's Petui Ambusher lands on Hydro. Although I can't immediately exploit that since I decided it's better just play my card draw options than using a skill which would actually deny an elemental reaction by applying Hydro on Hydro. You know, opponent's playing this sort of Vaporize deck with the buffed Tartaglia, buffed Child, and they're able to start getting some Riptide value for switching to Klee, eventually to trigger some Vaporize reactions. Start playing some Pyro, maybe working towards Klee's Burst. Okay, so with the help of these draw cards, we're able to assemble some of our synergies with Master Zhang and another copy of Golden House. That's pretty good. So some nice draws. The dice rolls are fine, but Liyue again going to help us out. And we're going into our second round, being able to play our Master Zhang, being able to play our Moon Piercer with a discount of 2 dice. And I'm doing this before making any other moves in case they actually take out Ganyu using a Pyro Resonance here. I'll still get the discount from Master Zhang, so the weapon I have on Ganyu. I don't mind too much if they take out Ganyu here. I'm able to deny a reaction here with Hydro on Hydro, so that's value enough in itself. If they're using a Pyro Resonance to get the kill here, then I should have a safer time with Zhongli after I get the free swap to Zhongli. As it is, the opponent doesn't have it or doesn't use it, and they're just going to use their elemental skill, so I'll just swap to Zhongli manually. Opponent will swap back to Tartaglia, back to Child, and they are threatening this burst potentially, or to maybe do an attack and then have that burst ready. But at this point, I'm totally fine just getting a little bit more value, using my elemental skill here. So my Moon Pierce I played was still discounting my 5-cost skill, so that's a big chunk of damage, as well as some significant shield.
What exactly is teamwork?
So back to Shunhe here, because they don't necessarily want to take more damage on Liyue. They've got, for example, a Pyro die, and the opponent seems to be in a very unfortunate spot where they're just wasting 2 dice, which is giving me a big advantage here already. So with the help of all these discounts, able to play Moon Piercer again, now onto my Shunhe, and use Shunhe's skill for the first time in this game and get these icy calls going, eventually for later. I'll get a crystallized reaction here, and I'll be drawing even more cards for my Harbour Wharf, so I've got another Moon Piercer, and this one is now costing me 0 since my Zhang is actually discounting that by 3 right now. So as I pick up pace in this game, we get some nice looking rolls. Keep the Geo die, likely that we want to use Zhongli this turn potentially. And it's going back to Klee. And we've got a few ways to actually pressure cleave with some damage, so for now I'm going to stay on Shunhe. Just use this elemental skill. There we go. Now I could actually use Shunhe's burst, but that's 1 damage off. Well, it would be 1 damage off getting the cleave if there wasn't a Lotus Flower Crisp. With the Lotus Flower Crisp actually, I'm okay just using this burst here. And with the help of this Moon Pierce in my hand, I'm actually still representing lethal on Klee, so I can deny the Klee burst. Just by doing a little bit of play this Moon Piercer for the cost of 0, override the last Moon Piercer, choose 1 card for a Cryo Die, and then 5 damage skill on Shunhe. And then here, we've still got food left in hand. I'd be happy playing this pizza this turn. So I'll just go ahead and do that, heal up my Shunhe. Some decent value, and with all these weapons developed, decent number of cards in my hand still, Zhang out and Golden House out, but most importantly, I'm a slower deck and I've still got extremely healthy characters here. My opponent actually just throws in the towel and gives up. So when things go to plan, you absolutely can bully aggressive decks with this one. In conclusion, I think this deck is really fun. And I think it's probably the best weapons deck at the moment. I don't think it's quite up to the power level of other top stall decks like Bin and Agent Electrocharged, but it's pretty close, and perhaps even better than those decks against aggressive decks. However, I find it's very hard to play, because it has a lot of different play patterns and there are a lot of factors which affect your damage breakpoints. I still feel like most of my losses with the deck are due to misplays, so maybe the deck could seem even better if played optimally. Anyway, if the deck seems interesting to you, give it a go, and I hope you enjoyed the video.